So, hi everyone, and welcome back to the Academy of Advanced Thought. And so this is the 43rd episode of what will be 50, that then becomes the book, The Academy of Advanced Thought. And that's the follow-up to Rise of Advanced Thought, which is my 6th, which is available obviously on all platforms and free of charge on Spotify. So don't pay for it, just listen to it on Spotify if you wish. I'm now joined by the wonderful Milo Wilkinson, who I met a few weeks ago at Sydney Opera House. And as soon as I met her, I was aware of the fact that this was someone who had to be part of the Academy of Advanced Thought. And then she spoke on stage and it verified that. And so she is a therapist, consultant, coach, speaker, wellbeing specialist, sports therapist, and above all, a behavioural scientist with over 20 years experience and specialising in predicting human behaviour, and the background being in psychotherapy, neurosciences and criminal sciences, hypnotherapy, NLP, and anything else in that regard. One of the main reasons why I wanted to speak to you today, Milo, is because the Academy of Advanced Thought is around the fact that the 60, 70,000 thoughts we think per day, of up to 90% being the same as the day before, the focus has always been for me on how we think and working on our thought muscle. And so that really resonated when you spoke in very much along those lines as well. So what I wanted to start with was, and just kind of going on the fly without any formal process here, but I'd love to know, there's a couple of things I'd love to discuss with you, and they're probably not the standard angles that you may have had before, but the first...
Thank God.
Yeah, well, let's see. Oh. The first thing is I've been working on a private theory that is that maybe if we looked at it on a critical perspective, so many people spend their time working on their physical health, and they'll go to the gym more or eat fewer carbs, or stop smoking and not drinking alcohol and so forth, but we think very little about how we think. And my kind of working theory is, or hypothesis I should say, is that I reckon there's a group of people who, when looking at why we don't concentrate on how we think as much, there's a group who are unaware that we can actually impact our reality positively by looking at how we think, or thinking about how we think. Then there's a group of people who are aware that they could, but are not sure how. And then there's possibly a third factor of people that just don't care. And so what I'd love to know is your perspective of whether this hypothesis of the three camps of inertia, if you like, what's been your experience when faced with people who you've been potentially even commissioned to help with how they think? What's the resistance?
Oh, it depends on how wedded they are to their best friend, and their best friend might be victim, misery, disinterest, disdain. If they've carried that friend around metaphorically for quite some time, and I'm showing them the view from the 6th floor without that friend with them, they're either going to want to connect to that view or not do it at all. And if that best friend that they've had for such a long time is something that they cannot visualize in any way living without, then the rate of change will be very minimal. There are also some people who have this script. This is their script. Here's my list of flaws, and that's been a script that they've had for 20 years. And that script has either gotten them some level of value or empathy or kindness or enablement. It might have gotten them a number of different things. And if they didn't see value without that, then they're not going to replace it with anything great. So I don't see the change often for those that are pretty squirreled into what it is that they want to be seen do.
So from a heuristics and biases perspective, would we call this partly a status quo trap? Or is it a supportive bias?
It's both of those things, but at an everyday type of thinking, an everyday type of language. If I have a fixed mindset of who I am and what I am and everything that comes with me, even if I go on a first date, clearly happily married, but even if I went on a first date, I would feed that list out to that person and just seeing what their reaction is going to be. And if their reaction was disdain, then I've done it just to validate what it is that I believe about myself.
Mm-hmm.
If it's somebody that says, I don't mind all of that, you know, and shameably, and I'm ashamed of it, but I'm going to admit it. I watched series 2 of Blind Love, and there's a particular character on that who does that. You know, in those first pod dates, she's got this very distinct script of all the things that she isn't, and all of her insecurities and all of the problems. And she leads with that in every single argument. And she uses them as hurdles in order for him to jump over. And if he jumps over that last one, I'll certainly marry him. But if he disappears, then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And a lot of us do that a lot of the time.
On that point, do you, I mean, I'm all for transparency in relationships and trying to create some form of camaraderie or some resonance. Do you think strategically there's also merit in a slow reveal over time, or would you condone the all cards on table approach?
Well, in Love is Blind, when they're sitting in pods and they can't see each other and they can only date through a wall, you know, that's all cards out, of course. Right. And some things, it's like the Johari window that we're all somewhat familiar with. You know, what is it that we know? What is it that we consciously don't know? What is it that others know that we don't know? And what are our blind spots? I think that in a dating or even employment situation, you might want to lay out, you know, they'll always ask that, what's your strengths and what's your weaknesses question? Yeah. And you can lay it out, and everybody says the weakness is I work too much or I work too hard, you know, chatter. I think that there's there's a cause for both cases, but what's the number one kind of thing that we're striving for is authenticity. Mm. And in that moment, if your truth is about being authentic, then so it shall be. And it should always be led with that, if that's who and what you are and what you believe.
Is there any ever any merit in strategically telling yourself what could theoretically be seen as a mistruth so that you can handle a situation better?
Give me an example of that.
So let's say, so I have I got bitten by a mosquito here on my neck.
I thought it was something else, but we'll go on.
Yeah, that's right. Right. Yeah, those are the days, God, I don't miss that. That's Tom said, just new trauma, actually an old trauma just came up. So I got bitten by a mosquito 3 days ago, and right. I've been relatively conscious of the fact that it looks far more aggressive from a victim perspective than it actually is. And I've actually told myself that it's been healing brilliantly. And I've actually created a blind spot of my own neck, so it doesn't actually exist anymore. And up until now, when you asked for an example of it, I had actually parked it in a part of my brain, which is something that happened in the past that I'd actually forgotten about. And now when I look at myself in the mirror, shaving this morning, I don't see the mosquito bite, because I've decided that it doesn't exist.
Okay.
And that's a trivial version, but one could argue that a more kind of hardcore version is that the most second to last business that I was involved with, I got pretty badly stung by a psychopathic criminal, and I my business partner, and I
might have treated him.
And so I told myself relatively fast in the process of the 2 years of legal nightmares that then happened, that all of this was a fantastic learning experience, and this was a springboard for what was next. Although the people around me were saying, oh my God, this was terrible for you. This is a tragedy. You've lost everything, you know, all this kind of stuff. So one could argue that was I chose to reframe it. And I guess the question really is in our reframings, one could argue that there's a question mark over an authenticity point there, unless of course one were to believe that the reality is purely based on how we think and how we interpret our story. So where's the line between an untruth that we tell ourselves versus a reframing, and where does authenticity sit along that?
Interestingly, I mean, depending if the reframing in the case of the business partner is true learnings from a situation that you simply can't control. And the only thing you could control in that particular moment was your response to what was an uncontrollable situation. And the way that we do that in a very emotionally intelligent way, is it a form of self-protection? 100%. But if that's what you need under that self-protection element, then that's what you're simply going to do. What is easier for us 73% of the time is to find the victim state in what it is that we're going through. What's harder is that learning state. So I understand that the people around you were saying how horrendous the situation was. That's what they know how to do. That's our default. What is harder is the 27% learning capability, opportunity, next step. This is a springboard. I'm going to be this person and this person off the back end of that. Either way, we're going to self-protect, but it is harder to do what you chose to do. Is it delusional? No, not when you're consciously doing it. If you're refusing to see the downside, if you're refusing to feel the downside, then that's suppression at its finest. And what is the risk of that? Suppression doesn't go anywhere. It lays in waiting, and it will bite you the next time a bigger event comes up, and it bites you twice as hard. So that is a form of self-expression also, but you remember the heliotropic effect. What you focus on grows. You were very much living the discounted problem of what it is that you were going on, but you also consciously chose where to focus your energy, belief, and opportunity. And I don't believe that is delusional or self-deceit in any way. I think that is the way in which you self-protect at a higher order Maslow's self-actualization type level. Where we do that, where that line of authenticity is when you choose to disclose that there is perhaps, a disadvantage to being your new business partner, where you sit there and go, the skies are great and everything's great. Authentically, this is what's going on in my life. If you're sitting there talking to Max at a barbecue, and Frank's had a really hard situation with his family, and Max is sitting there going, everything's great for me. That's where we're kind of sitting there saying, are we truly being authentic when we're not actually sharing or matching what it is that's being shared with us?
Yeah, I concur with that. I wanted to ask you, when we met in Sydney, whether, and then the photographer came and threw a camera in our face and got us to kind of do weird poses and stuff. But yeah. I was just about to ask you a question at that point, believe it or not. And the question was, do you believe in free will?
Well, I'm a hypnotherapist, so of course I do.
so in terms of in terms of a deterministic kind of a deterministic future, would you put yourself in the from a therapist standpoint, I can imagine where that sits, but do you feel, for instance, that the universe is unfolding as it should, to a pattern that was preset, or something that is so completely random that every single thing that we choose determines the future?
Oh, that's a difficult question to answer. It depends if you feed into the media, if you're reading any kind of political influence. There is a lot of influencing or culture contagion that goes on in the world, even in a community group, even if you're in some kind of cult. There's that type of element going on. I think free will is to really understand your who, what, and how as an individual, but you're a member of a community. So knowing that this is the way that you are, the way that you think, what you truly believe, what you value, your center of purpose, how engaged you're going to be, the center of relationships. If you know that, then any piece of information you layer on top of that is curiosity and choice. It is not happening to you. Do I think that's common? Absolutely not. If I had to put a percentage on it, I think it's less than 5% of the population.
Yeah.
We're very, very, very easily skewed and controlled. In Australia particularly, and I don't mean to be disrespectful or political, but when you step outside of Australia off the back of a pandemic, you will see to the level that Australians were controlled in that situation, and that became the new normal quickly.
Yeah, I noticed that. In fact, I went to London a few weeks ago. Actually, I got back a few days before I met you, and it was definitely a contrast frame. It was really obvious between the two, because it was kind of, frying pan fire type. I could see the difference. I recently interviewed a guy called Matthias Desmet, who is a psychologist from Europe, and he speaks of something called mass formation psychosis. And he was saying that 30% of the world would feel as if they were are consciously aware of the coercion that could be being born upon them. And he reckons that there's another 30% who are completely hypnotized in this mass formation psychosis model of his, well, not his, of course, but it's a reversioning of other people's long-standing scientific research into that. But then there's 40% of people who are swing votes. And so his view is that the pandemic situation was something that in various different regions more than others, a real life version of what has been sometimes taught in some psychological courses and psychology courses, in terms of what the kind of the Nazi regime may have been similar to, and other regimes over time, and Lenin and so forth. Do you feel that when or if you're aware of some form of coercion, I don't want to really use the term thought control, I wasn't going to go too Orwellian on this, but if there is, for instance, some form of serious editing of information and censorship of other information, and you can see between the lines quite straightforwardly what the key messages are, what's your take personally, Milo's take on that, when from a professional standpoint you can see the techniques because we've studied them?
Yes.
What do you then do? You try and change the swing voters round? Do you keep in your bubble and just make sure that you and your family and loved ones are aware at least? What's your strategy?
Neither. I think that my strategy is enablement. So I'll give you a live example. Working with a couple of clients in recent times around vaccination, to vaccinate or to not, and both to vax or to not vax. They've both got their cases. Everybody's got that view that they're almost willing to fight to the death on, and it's very relevant in the school that my children go to. And my job is to not believe in one side or the other. I believe in what I believe, but it is not to sit there and to defend what it is that somebody else's perspective is, or to deny what it is that somebody, person B's perspective is. But what I've encouraged in these particular discussions is, when we get a thought into our mind, very similar to what we're talking about at the Opera House, when we believe something to be true, our brain, all it wants to do is prove that. So if you believe that vaccination is true, then you are absolutely creating a mental workforce to fight with that army at all cost. And the same with the non-vaccination, you're going to do the same. What I do encourage is, for every vaccinator or non-vaccinator, go about your business to understand the opposing view. Whether you adopt it for yourself or not, understand it. So I understand the case study for a number of different people around, I don't choose to be vaccinated. But I always say to them, give me 3 reasons why you could or should. And give me 3 reasons that oppose what it is that you've created as an arsenal towards that. We can have a fixed view without even trying on any particular topic. But it's the ones that push themselves towards that 20% that the brain has not yet entertained. And that is an opposing view to my fixed view. And what are the possibilities of that? And is it enough to sway myself?
Yeah.
So I'm not about swaying anybody. I'm about opening the eyes to the things that they yet have not entertained, because their brain is fixed and they don't want to see anything else.
Yeah. I funny enough, with the chapter 42, with Minter Dial, the most recent video cast, we were speaking about our love of debate, and one of my best moments of growing up was the debating society formats. And so I love the fact that the real truest way of debating, the most successful way of debating, was to be able to debate both sides extremely detailed. And in fact, the way, one of my favorite 2 years period of debates was, you would get the subject on Monday, And then on the Thursday was the debate, and you didn't know which side of the argument you had to debate until you were walking on stage. And then the organizer would whisper in your ear and say, you're going to be this side, or you're going to be this side. And that's that. It's almost it's an unlosable situation when you can argue both sides. I mean, I could argue for and against Donald Trump to an American with equal severity, all the way down the rabbit hole, through down to the Roman Empire and upward, across. And so, which way do you want to argue it? I could, the same thing with vaccinations, the same thing with the media circus around it. You know, I think I can even argue the point of the fact that we need fewer people on Earth to survive and flourish, and I can argue that the only purpose of humans is to bring new life into the world. Either one. It's provided you can see both sides that deep.
Oh, and it doesn't mean that I'm in any stretch amiable. My mere profession does not allow me to be Switzerland on every single particular issue. Yeah. In fact, I'll fight to the death with my husband on some particular issue because it's fun, because we want to do that. But in the case of my profession, I'm not there to sway anybody on any particular viewpoint. I can't even do that with a criminal that's committed a horrendous crime. You take 6 different angles in order for them to understand, but not empathize with what it is that's happened and why they're currently sitting in the seat in which they're sitting in. Yeah, it's not my job to convince, but it is my job to enlighten in some particular way. And those people, back to your original question of, you know, a third, those people that are swing voters, the people that are swing voters will make their own conclusion. But if I define that conclusion for them, then they're back to swing vote within 2 weeks.
Yeah, right. Quite right. Because it hasn't become it hasn't become a habit, an atomic habit of their own. There's not a lifestyle yet. Do you believe in karma?
I'm Hawaiian, of course.
I love how you pre-validate any question with evidential background. So how do you?
I'm just trying a test.
Let's talk about karma just for a second. So do you believe that if someone were to do let's personalize it, not from a professional level, from a personal level, if you do something that you know isn't, for the sake of argument, the right thing to do, it's a very loose term, because it's very subjective, do you have a karma account in your head that you run? Yes,
wholeheartedly. I think the scientist in me thinks it's ridiculous, but the core of who I am is just, I mean, the other day I found in a car park, it was 20 cents on the ground. And that old adage of see a penny, pick it up all day long, you'll have good luck. In my mind, it was, if I don't pick that up, then I'm sending this consequence to the universe that I don't value money and that this is going to play itself out in a certain way. So I tried to pick it up, but it was one of those tricked, it was glued there, and I tried to pick it up. And I'm like, it's okay, universe, back out there again. I tried really hard. That means that I value it. And I do this constantly.
Do you believe in God?
I believe in a higher power, wholeheartedly, and I grew up in a very, very religious family. I think when I was younger, I was definitely an atheist. As I get older, I'm more curious than I've ever been.
And so when you say atheist, we mean from a theological perspective, you believed in the non-existence of God?
I believed in the Big Bang Theory and that everyone that went to church was brainwashed. That was my family system, you know, sneaking an eye into Tuesday night Bible studies in my lounge room and everyone speaking in tongues. I didn't get it. I never did. Yeah. But I understand, you know, watching some people of value in my life that needed that higher order in their last breaths and last days, and the peace in which that brought them. I became a much bigger advocate than I've ever been. And I baptized myself and my children only about 4 years ago.
And would you say that the karma account is linked to the power, the something higher than ourselves? Is that the entity that delivers the karmic manifest?
Don't know. I don't believe so, no. I believe I was very black and white on this. It was, I have 2 children, and if they die, I don't want them to go to purgatory or hell. And I baptized them for that reason and that reason only. Have I read the Bible? No, I haven't. Have I gone down into it? When I was a child, I grew up as a coloured child in a very white community. And there was definitely segregation, as in that was the Sunday school for the white children, and that was the Sunday school for me and my sister, and that we were not allowed to integrate at all. In fact, the playground was something that we only got to play in when the Caucasian children were finished. So I never saw great examples of religion and what it is that the commandments were supposed to espouse. But karmic wise, I don't see it as a higher order. I see it as a universal thing, as in I'm telling the universe something. Am I telling God something? No, I'm telling the universe and all of the energy and entity that's associated with the universe that I am a good person, that I have good value, that I value things that are valuable. And that's what I think is feeding back into me.
On that universal point, if there were to be a kind of, let's say, a slightly natural or more quantum view on that, in terms of whether we believe that the universe is us and we are the universe and the whole thing is one energy, gradually oscillating.
You're not going to go all Eckhart Tolle on me now, are you?
Well, and or let's say maybe 3,000-year-old, 5,000-year-old scriptures from the Indus Valley. So, but yeah,
I haven't read them.
Let's give Eckhart his time in the day in the sun. But so would you, when you see the universe when you use the universe figuratively or actually, do you see it as something outside of yourself or something within yourself as well?
I see it within myself, but also an accumulation of energy. So I just believe in energy being around you, whether that being spiritual God or other. I believe that we are putting an energy out into the universe and that energy is coming back. I also want to believe that at the right time that there is a higher order according to my behavior, that kindness is critical, that not screwing people over like your psychopathic business partner, that is not part and parcel of who I want to be, because if I was, I would expect that to be my return in some particular way, because that's the revolving door that is each and every one of us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when I've raised these type of topics before, I'm glad that now I must say that due to the work of people like Joe Dispenza and even the kind of slightly less scientific people, that there's less of the woo-woo part of that. And I think that we're helped somehow by quantum mechanics, quantum physics to some extent, because what you've just said in terms of energy out, energy in is also scientifically accurate. So there is I'm happy with the progress that we've made. We're drawing a slightly more solid lines between spirituality and science, and I'm enjoying that blend, because it makes dinner parties slightly less embarrassing for my friends when I'm always the guy that's saying these kind of things about energy, and they're like, oh god, here he goes again, energy this, energy that, kind of and all that. Like, well, we're all energy, right? That this is all energy. This table is just a much slower oscillation than this water, right? And yeah, sure, whatever, John, go and eat some mung beans. And now it's more, we seem to be more.
Do you eat mung beans? Do you actually eat mung beans?
I tried it once. I was on an Ayurvedic diet, and they're disgusting. Horrible.
Yeah, no, they're not for me. Not at all. Oh no, not going to happen.
What's your favorite food?
Oh, I love Italian food. I believe that in my past life, in some level of existence, I was an Italian girl. And I love Italian food. I love everything about it. I love the language. I love the food. But I cannot discount the other cultural element of myself. And if I do not have seafood of some description on any given week, I feel like I've run over a monk in a previous life. I feel less than in some way. So if I can combine seafood and Italian, which I do in a beautiful marinara on occasion, I'm all about it.
Do you feel guilt often?
No, no, I see things, back to the energy discussion. I see this concept of energy in my mind around it has a dollar value. And if I'm going to spend energy that has a certain value on that, on thoughts that are not going to propel me emotionally or financially or from an energetic perspective, then I don't see the point. So do I want to sometimes sit down and have 17 ways of can't be bothered? Of course I can. And sometimes I indulge in that. As I disclosed, I watch Love is Blind on Netflix. But I see no point in spending hours of time on useless emotions that have no good endpoint to them regarding myself. Does that make me critically painful when I'm sitting across from someone else that does that? Yes. But I don't see the point in emotions like anger, sadness, fear, and guilt. I don't.
I add another one onto that, which is comparison. Other than comparison of the person you are today versus tomorrow, I add comparison to that mix of the band of brothers that should be eliminated as fast as possible. In terms of transience versus permanence, where do you sit in the? How far do you go down the lack of permanence route in terms of, we know that everything ends, that the entire, in fact, the entire structure of the universe is a movement to atrophy. So this is like from a scientific perspective. So I don't want to sound too esoteric here, but everything does degrade. And do you have, are there some things in your life that you believe will be permanent, even though you know from a scientific perspective nothing actually is?
I'd hope that my legacy is permanent, and my legacy, I can't be measured on anything in this world other than the humans in which I raise. So my children are my sense of permanency, even if it is only them and stops with them. But they are entirely my legacy, and their center of their own belief about who, what, and how they are is my sense of permanency. And if it stops there, I'm done. I'm good. Yeah. That's it.
And so what about anything, is there anything else in your life that you see as permanent?
Oh, I wish my Botox was a little bit more. Natural. My dog. No, I don't. I actually don't have this disgruntled or disillusioned view of what should be forever, because I don't believe that anything truly is. So no.
How would you describe what love is?
I say it's a warmth. I say it's a feeling, as in how you feel when that someone is by you, coming near you, or in thought of you. And it's that warmth that goes about knowing that you are safe, that that person is yours and that you are his or hers, or they. It's just a feeling that you can't even describe. And my daughter asked me that the other day. She said, "Five, Mummy, how do I know if I love someone?" And I said, "How do you know if you don't?" And she says, I don't know. And I said, "But how do you know if you don't love them?" She says, "Because I don't want to be around them." And I said, "So, and what else?" And she said, "Because I don't like them. I don't want to play in the sandpit with them. I don't want to paint with them. I want to do anything like that." And I said, "Okay, so then tell me what love is." Love is however that person at that age, at that time, of that sex, of that life, describes it to themselves. But unfortunately, because of the negative part of our heritage in our brain, in our DNA, we tend to know what love is when we compare it to what it is that we don't want. And that's unfortunately ingrained quite strongly. And I did that to her. I wanted her to recognize that. But then the same conversation was, let's build upon what it is when you know what it is, not on what it isn't. Yeah. And we do that often.
A couple of 100 years AD, St. Augustine constructed one of the greatest marketing campaigns ever to exist of the concept of original sin. Do you feel that the church in its general capacity has had an equally beneficial and detrimental impact on people's lives?
It's a tough one, because I do believe that those people that believe in the church of whatever denomination that might be would describe it wholeheartedly as beneficial to them, their life, their values, their family, their children, and everything that goes around that. And those people that have watched every war be focused around ultimately, you know, an enormous amount of religion, there is cause and effect on both particular sides of that particular argument. And I believe that both in the debate, you know, if we had a debate, Jonathan, and we would have both sides of that debate lined out in every way, there is a large case for both.
There is.
And again, I sit on the line.
Yeah. What would you change about yourself?
Not a lot, to be honest. I'm marching to the beat of the drum in which I've created and intended. So could I be a million other things? Absolutely. Do I spend energy dollars on thinking what they are? No. Do I have aspirations? Yes, but I wouldn't change in order to get them. So I am an intentional human being that sits as a whole person right in front of you and does not live on anger, sadness, fear, or regret in any way. I'm perfect, just saying. No, I'm kidding.
And the Botox is something that increases the perfection.
I'm joking. I don't do the Botox. I'm just Polynesian. What more do you say?
Black don't crack. What can I say? Sorry.
Exactly. Exactly. I don't need it. I'm good for now.
Yeah, for now. Yeah. So what do you feel when you would say, if someone asked you what you see success as? Now, as a parent myself, and we've both got two kids with different people. We both got two kids. We could class success as bringing life into the world and enabling them to be confident people who are aware of their own thing. But apart from the children part, what else would you say you class success as in your life?
It's a daily measure for me, and it's a discussion I have quite often. Success is a daily measure. I mentioned before that I live a life of intention. I want to be at cause of my life, not in effect of the life in which other people have created for me. I want to own my space, because I know if I don't, someone else will. I know that success at the end of the day is me being purposeful, whether it's cleaning out my linen cupboard, which I have done, clean out the linen cupboard. My sense of purpose last Saturday was to clean out that cupboard. My level of engagement, which is the next measure that I work on. If I'm going to clean up my cupboard and I'm going to spend 4 hours doing it, I'm going to do it better than anyone in this universe. It's the Will Smith treadmill, don't get off until you die mindset. So I cleaned out the linen cupboard. I YouTubed 3 different ways to fold fitted sheets. I found my own hybrid, and I was all in. So what it is I intend to do on any given day, I'm doing it, and I am all in. I'm going to do it. If I die doing it, I'm doing it wholeheartedly. The third measure I have around myself is my relationships, that I have to be truly engaged in what it is that I'm doing. And if I'm giving somebody my time, I'm giving them time, presence, and all of me. And the last measure of success is my health, making sure that I am equally balanced in life and work and joy and brain and everything else in the middle, and being part of my life as a mum.
Yeah.
So my success, or success in general, is a life by intention, in measuring all the buckets of your life and feeding them by intention, not because you were forced to, because it was at the deficiency.
And I've got one final question before we wrap up, and I can't believe how fast this 50 minutes has gone. It's like the fastest, or 40 minutes, however long it's
it's not like the other 42 are excruciating your clock watching. We're doing good, are we?
Average. No.
Let's strive for that too. That's success.
That's right. Yeah, we're joking. Anyone who's watching that, average is not success. Well, unless of course it's your success. Do you feel that? No, let me ask in a slightly more direct way. One of the things that I've had to answer the most of in the last 2 years is when I was rebuilding myself from the disastrous business situation I was in. People, the same people who said, "Oh my God, that's terrible, what a disaster," everything, then 6-12 months later, when I've, rebuilt different structures and I'm flying again, and it's not, people then, the same people switch it to, but it's all right for you because, and then insert anything inside that could be, oh, it's all right for you because you had a good business network that you could rebuild things with, or it's all right for you because you're able to earn money whenever you want, or it's all right for you because you've got a profile online that people follow and recognize, it's all right for you because you're a best-selling author, it's all right for you, whatever. And the true answer to it all, and I've said this so many times in the last couple of years, it's kind of like a broken record, is that the level of work to rebuild anything is not dissimilar to the level of work it takes on a daily basis to ensure that you are living with intention and following your purpose.
Right.
And none of that is easy under any circumstances. And I'm thinking, as listening to you, there may be some people listening, watching this, saying, well, it's all right for her because she can do whatever she wants because she's got an established career. It's all right for her because whatever. And so what is your answer to this? It's all right for you because?
I think in the case of you and myself, we have an established career because we had a life by intention, and we weren't derailed by the slightest or biggest thing that ever actually found our way. And every single one of us has those trials and tribulations. It's not what you go through, it's how you manage it and how you manage yourself during it. You can't control everything. You can control your own thinking around that. I didn't always have an established career. I have 7 university degrees. I worked my ass off for those. I squirreled away in a corner to get them. No one knew my name and no one knew my brand, and they still probably don't. I'm an academic more than I am any kind of podcast speaker or anything else. And I'm satisfied with that. That's not success for me. But at the end of the day, I do have more than those things that they're explaining. At least you have a business network, at least you have this. What I have is drive. Yes, right. And what I have is focus, and what I have that sense of purpose. And I'll have that any given day. And that has gotten me to where I am. But it also started me from where I was. And I never gave it up, not for anything.
Yeah.
Same for you.
Well, anyone who, thank you for that, and I'm really, I think that's such an important message to end on, and also for people to bear in mind, and anyone who's listened to any of these the collection of these videos will know that it very much echoes my view of how we choose our response to things, and how many times, rather than counting how many times we get knocked down, making sure that there's always one more of the amount of times we get up. And and I've written about these things and spoken about them so much now. I think it's great to hear that from someone else who and neither you nor I fit into the average kind of especially from the UK perspective, white privileged situation, and so is it okay for people to look into what you do more by going somewhere online? Is there a site where maybe people who are watching this would want to book you for things, or your services that you offer? Where can we find out about you?
You can always find me. You can find me at milowilkinson.com. So that's where I'll be at all times. In the true nature of my profession, you'll find out the extent of my profession when I retire from it. But milowilkinson.com, my value is just finding very simple ways to say what it is that we already know, but we just got to make it relevant.
Brilliant. Milo, thank you so much. Thank you for being the 43rd chapter, and it's in no particular order. I really appreciate it.
Welcome, anytime.
Cheers.